It is February 2019. I haven't been this excited for many years. We just held the biggest Trials tournament I've ever seen, and I got to host it. This was our way of saying goodbye to Trials Fusion and to usher in a new age for Trials. It is February 2019 and Trials Rising is about to be released. I was so excited. For as long as YouTube has existed, I have watched gameplay videos. And for as long as I have known about Trials Fusion, I have watched people play the hardest Trials tracks imaginable. In Trials, players can build their own tracks, which has led a subsection of the Trials community to making borderline impossible tracks, a lot like the Kaizo community in Super Mario World and Mario Maker. There are few things in the world that I find more impressive than watching such fine-controlled movements. Platformers like Mario is one thing, but this dynamic physics-based movement of the Trials games is another beast entirely. I bought the game and I played it. I spent hours upon hours getting through the main campaign, and my fascination for these YouTube professional writers increased as I went. I could barely do a bunny hop, and there were these video makers out there able to do them without even touching the ground with their front wheel. The core gameplay of Trials Fusion isn't perfect, but it's goddamn close to it. It is super simple in concept. You can lean forwards and backwards, you can throttle, and you can brake, and that's it. That's all the controls you have. And it's super simple to get into, but it has a virtually infinite skill ceiling. The YouTube algorithm caught on quickly and understood that I found this stuff interesting. It kept suggesting new channels for me to watch, and I started learning the names of some of these ninja riders. Pex, Storm, Czar, Scotta, Shane, the list goes on. I knew them, but they didn't even know I exist. As an invisible lurker, I got to know their struggles and their achievements. I saw them take on impossible track after impossible track and make them seem effortless. And I knew what I had to do. I jumped on Google. I went into the lowest level ninja tracks I could find, with the help of a few websites that have been built by community members. Every single track kicked my ass, but I kept at it. I banged my head against this proverbial brick wall, only breaking up the endless first checkpoint frustrations with trying to improve my scores on the still hard but somewhat easier campaign tracks. Eventually, I got good enough to pass the easiest ninja tracks. Each pass would take me a long time, with hundreds of faults per track, but over time, those numbers went down. I became more confident in my abilities. At this time, I was already very active on Twitch, but in other games. I would speedrun the Talos Principle a lot, and I watched a fair bit of Rocket League and some Souls speedruns and stuff. This was until I came across a Trials Fusion stream by chance. And this stream changed everything. The streamer was Slick Scythes. I don't even know how to pronounce that. Slick Scythes? Slick Scythe? Whatever. He was playing individual checkpoints of a new track he was working on, together with fellow ninja rider Scotta. I lurked. I watched them silently as they were struggling with a super hard back wheel only obstacle. After a while of watching, I decided to speak up and make contact. "How hard is this?" I typed in chat. "Is this a level 6? I thought level 6 was like the highest level of ninja proficiency possible. I had watched some videos of level 6s on YouTube, and I knew that that was the pinnacle of trial skill. They actually laughed at me. "No," Scotta said. "This is a level 8, which with his amazing Scottish accent. Level 8. I didn't even know level 7 existed. And in order to explain why this was a shock to me and why this kind of blew my mind, here's a brief overview of how ninja levels work. In the base game, the hardest difficulty is called Extreme. And it is extreme, like it lives up to its name. It's not easy, it's actually really tough. If you're able to pretty much flawlessly pass a hard track, which is the second hardest difficulty, you might be able to barely pass an extreme track without timing out. And with like hundreds of faults. By the way, quick side note, if you spend 30 minutes on a track, the track just ends and you can't complete it, and it just tells you epic fail. This is what I mean when I say timing out. You have to restart from the beginning. A fault means that you have to reset back to the previous checkpoint because you messed up, so you have to try the obstacle again. But anyway, back to the difficulty talk. Here's the kicker. The difficulty curve continues in that way. So like, in order to be able to pass Ninja level 1 tracks, you should be able to consistently, nearly flawlessly run through extreme tracks. If you want to pass Ninja level 2 tracks, you should be consistently low faulting Ninja level 1 tracks, and so on. So it's like an exponential increase of difficulty here. And Ninja level 8 was mind-blowing to me. And here these two guys were just banging their heads against this impossible obstacle for hours on end. And I watched. And then the magical moment happened. Skotta passed it. He beat the obstacle, and cheers ensued. And I cheered as well. It was incredible. The full version of this track was eventually released, and to this date, it's only been passed by 2 people. There's a link in the description to GT4's pass of this track. So that gives you an idea of how hard it is. Only 2 people have passed it. In total, in the world. These guys streamed for hours, and they streamed banging their heads against the same wall for hours. And I loved it. So I did the same. I started streaming Trials. And because I had spoken up in the chats of these legendary writers, some of them came to hang out with me. These top tier players came to my chat. They gave me tips, track suggestions, motivation, and over time, friendship. I belonged here. I climbed the ninja skill tree and eventually started passing some of these impossible tracks myself. Well, not Ninja level 8, don't get me wrong, I'm not that good at the game, but I started passing like Ninja level 4 tracks. I've passed like a few Ninja level 5 tracks, so I'm okay at the game. And I've felt like I was becoming one of them. I became a moderator of both the community Discord server and the Facebook fan group. I helped many aspiring ninjas get better at the game by giving demonstrations, live tutorials on stream. I gave tips and motivation. I started giving back to the community, all that the community had given me, and it was awesome. I had found a home, you know? Then the announcement came. A new Trials game was coming.
Oh, fucking motorbike wheel, boys!
Oh, yo, boys!
Oh my god! That's it!
Is it happening?
It's it, boys!
I think it's it.
Oh, here it is!
Oh my god. What an entrance.
Oh my god!
Why is he not
What a guy.
Trials Rising. It was to be the shining light that would take the franchise and the community out of the darkness and into the light. Our tiny community of a few hundred people would grow exponentially, and Trials would take the Twitch and YouTube worlds with storm. We would hold tournaments. We would become an esport, maybe? We would promote the game and ourselves and spearhead a new era. We would overtake Rocket League on Twitch. We would overtake Fortnite on Twitch. Alright, maybe not Fortnite. I remember watching Amba and Fat Shady on stage at E3, and it looked to me like this would be the most ambitious Trials game yet, and I was ecstatic. This was my chance of doing something that I love and maybe harvest success. I guess I was a little bit naive. The other writers kept their hopes in check, and I didn't really understand why at the time. Most of them seemed to think that Trials couldn't become mainstream, quote unquote. I thought we can make it mainstream. If the game is good, the community will handle the promotion. We'll make tournaments and other events where we'll make videos and stream and show off, and people will come. I know it. If I can get hooked on this game from watching other people play, then other people can get hooked too. We just gotta pitch it in the right way. And be open. We had the opportunity to play Rising way before it was released. First, there was the technical test in fall of 2018, which we had to sign an NDA for. Then came the closed beta, and right before release, there was an open beta. And already during these playtests, some of the old-timers in the community were beginning to show pessimism. The bikes handled very differently from what we were used to, and the game kept stuttering and crashing, and it had issues. But hey, it's just beta testing. I'm sure the game will be stable upon release. Mind you, the open beta was like a week before the full game was scheduled to release. And the version of the game that the public had access to was a bit of a mess, and our hope for a stable release was dwindling. The full game came out February 26th, 2019, after having its launch postponed for 2 weeks, presumably due to a bug fixing crunch. Now, release week is a very sensitive time for a new game. This is when new players enter and have their first experiences within the franchise. If you get release week right, your game becomes huge. If you get it wrong, you flop. If the full game was to have the stability of the open beta, it would probably be best to postpone the launch for like 6 months or something to make sure launch week would give new players the most solid experience they can get. But the game did release. And guess what state it was in? I'm assuming you're able to guess. List of problems. The progression was grindy. Most players quit before even getting to the medium tracks. To get to the extreme tracks, which a lot of us think is where the fun part of the game starts, you have to reach a very high level. And by high level, I don't mean player skill. I mean a typical RPG-style progression based on experience points. How this progression makes sense in a Trials game beats me, but I was willing to give it a chance. To get to this high level, you had to slough through repeated mundane tasks, contracts, like do 10 backflips and don't let go of throttle over and over for somewhere around 8 to 12 hours to get enough experience. As a side note, I did this 3 times. I did it on PC first, then on PS4 and on Xbox. And honestly, I wasn't too bothered by it, but I can imagine that this would put off a lot of people. Stability issues. The game crashed a lot on all platforms. There was severe lag issues, notably on the track UK Upper, but there was also these random frame drops every now and then on every track, which would just kill your run. So like if you were going for a platinum medal or a diamond medal and you got one of these stutters, it would kill your run every time. And this was happening on top-end PCs and on top-end consoles like the Xbox One X. Save games were getting wiped for some people, and a lot of runs weren't getting saved to the leaderboards, which, by the way, 6 months after release was still the case on the Ninja tracks. And the game just crashing randomly upon entering Track Central or entering multiplayer. And if I had bought a new game to try it out and it would crash repeatedly on trying to get into the game, I would just claim a refund on Steam and look to a different franchise. It's a harsh world, and there are so many games being released that it's not worth it to bother suffering through a buggy mess. So I think we probably lost some potential community members and players there. Problem number 3 isn't objectively a problem, but for a lot of people it was a problem, so I'm gonna mention it anyway. Bike handling. It didn't really translate very well from the previous 2 titles, Fusion and Evolution. There's this magnetic attraction between the wheels and the ground and obstacles, which feels very counterintuitive and unrealistic and weird. It's probably there to prevent the bike from being overly bouncy, but it felt janky and unintuitive to us veterans. It wasn't objectively a problem though. Unless you're a Ninja Rider, but that's a story for another time. Track Central was a complete mess, and it deterred builders from building new tracks. If you built a track and uploaded it as a Ninja track, only zero fault runs would be saved to the leaderboards, so people wouldn't play them unless they were good enough to zero fault them, which nobody were anyway. And there was no real trending tab on Track Central. So if you uploaded a track, it wouldn't be promoted or shared with other players in any way. Nobody would play it. You just upload it into a void. And the interface design was, I'm sorry to say this, but it was awful. It was horrid. It has gotten a bit better since launch now, but I fear that might be too little too late. Next problem is multiplayer. Public multiplayer was and still is fundamentally flawed. While you're trying to join a game, you'll see the names of the other players who will be placed in your lobby. So, if you list up for a game and you see the name of a really good player, just press B on your controller to back out. Wait for them to enter their game, and then join back in and search again, see if you can find easier opponents. This way, you don't lose points. So if you want to gain ranks, you don't have to play so well, you just have to tactically quit out a whole lot and make sure that you're playing against weaker players. In other games, like Rocket League, you're not going to see who your opponents are until you're locked in for the round. If you back out at that point, you will suffer a penalty. So even if you know you'll lose this round, it's still worth playing it out. Penalties could be, in Rocket League for example, you get locked out of matchmaking for 15 minutes or half an hour or something, and you lose ranking points a little bit. Also, multiplayer was, and still is, very laggy. Another interesting little tidbit here is that the game speed, and the speed the game ticks work is connected to your frame rate. So if you play on an inferior system, you will literally drive slower than your opponents. You will have a lower top speed than your opponents because of it. Also, private multiplayer wasn't available when the game was launched. Because of this, we couldn't hold any tournaments or multiplayer events, which I think would have been good for building hype and making people interested in the game. And even to this date, now we have private multiplayer, but now, still, we can't use private multiplayer to have people test a track before you release it. So you can't import a track from your editor into private multiplayer to have others test it. This is something you could do in Fusion, and I don't understand why it's not a thing in Rising, and it would make things a lot easier for track builders. I don't think we'll ever get to know the real reasons why they didn't postpone the launch to fix these issues, or, what went wrong, I guess. My best guess is that they didn't dare to postpone the launch after having sold pre-order copies to people. I had pre-ordered the game myself, and when the launch was postponed by 2 weeks, it actually made me super antsy. I felt like I've paid for this game, I want to play it, As a huge Trials fan, I was like, I don't care if it's a buggy mess, just let me play the buggy mess, In retrospect, I don't think that's great. But anyway, I can't imagine how shitty my reaction would be if they told me that the game I already paid for would be pushed back several months. Now, then you can ask, why did they start selling pre-orders when the game was in an unplayable state? But that's how it is now. That's how the world works. In order to stay alive, developers have to work really tight schedules and make things work to fit the business cycles of big boy publisher boss. Again, we won't ever know the real reasons things happened the way they did, because the people who know the reasons aren't allowed to tell us. Which kinda sucks, but it is what it is. So what was the vision for Rising? What kind of ambition are we talking about? You see, I thought this ambition was about creating a game that would last a long time. I thought it would be about making an esport, or at least making a long-lasting experience for players of all skill levels and disciplines, and about trying to build a bigger community. I thought it was about having events, either organized by UB Red Links or by us, the community. I thought it was about showmanship, sportsmanship, cheers, team spirit, and fun, and I think I was presumptuous. I thought this because this is what I wanted personally. As a viewer and consumer of media, I would take Trials Fusion events over Rocket League, Dota, League of Legends, StarCraft, and any other esport if I had the chance. Just as how in real life I would prefer to watch Trials on TV over watching Formula 1 or soccer or cricket. But maybe they just wanted to make a casual experience for people to enjoy and have fun with, and there's nothing wrong with that. Not quite as ambitious as I had hoped, but, you know. So now, well over half a year after the game came out, the community is still roughly the same size as it was before. We have a few new writers, but we've also lost a bunch of the old ones along the way. The growth I was hoping for isn't happening. And it has caused me to become a bitter old man. I have literally aged 30 years. I have a white beard now, which is why I'm not turning the camera on for this video. I had to take breaks from writing the script every 2 hours to shout at the neighbor kids to get off my lawn and to have crumpets and tea or whatever the heck old people enjoy these days. Oh man, as time passed, I just got more and more pessimistic. For several months after the game was released, I tried my best to keep my chin up. I loved the game, and I wanted to do my best to make it work and to make it grow. And as Rising continued to be something else than what I personally dreamed of, and fixes continued to be implemented very slowly, people came and went. New players, new potential players, I guess, dropped by the various Twitch streamers to check out the game and ask, should I get this game? Is this worth it? Should I buy this game? And a lot of streamers just said, don't buy this game. It's not worth buying this game right now. It's a buggy mess. And people didn't buy the game, and that's fine. And over time, I honestly became kind of toxic. The tone in my streams over the past few months have gone from jolly happy fun time to god heck damn it, this is frustrating and not fun. And I don't want to be like that. That's not me. To be completely honest, this isn't just because of Trials. I'm undergoing some major changes in my life. I just moved a month ago and I don't have a job yet, which, as a side note, also means I'm rapidly running out of money, which is kind of full panic, and of course that impacts my mood on stream a lot too. The core gameplay of the Trials games is the best I've ever seen in any game ever. It's incredibly simple, yet incredibly deep, and it has kept me enamored for thousands of hours of playtime, and it's undoubtedly my favorite game franchise of all time. But I actually cannot recommend that you buy it. Not now. Not until something big changes, and I honestly don't really see that happening anytime soon. And so I feel a little lost. I love these games, but as it is right now, I'm completely unable to enjoy them. I dared to dream, but my dreams were all unrealistic. So unless something big changes, I think this is it for me. It's time for me to find something new. But I don't quite know what yet, so I'm open to suggestions in the comments below. Thank you very much. That's it for this video. Okay. Oh, hey, if you want to help me out and also be really cool looking, have a quick look at my beautiful new merch stuff. I have socks, I have mugs, I have shirts and stuff, and they're heckin' adorable. Look at this. Link in the description, because why not? Also, I would like to give a special thanks to some people, just for being awesome. I'm really sorry for being such a downer in my Twitch streams recently, but thank you so much for all the support you've given me in this mess of a time. Especially Hojo, Fable, Torin, Czar, Scotta, Marple. Honestly, the list could go on for a long time. I owe you guys, big time.